Excellent. So I'll get started. Again, sorry for the delay, just having a few technical issues, which is seems to be coming part and parcel with working remotely. And just to say, I hope everybody's keeping well. I know it's tough times at the minute for charities and everyone alike, actually. So just best wishes to everybody, and I hope everybody's keeping well. I'll try and fly through this slide deck today because I know everybody's really busy. Um, Basically, just welcome to, thank you very much for attending and welcome to this Lightful webinar. I'll be talking to you about Facebook and Instagram for charities. So we'll go over some best practices for these, two popular social media platforms that should at the very least kind of act as a reminder. You kind of should just go through some top tips and tricks just to make sure that we're all maximizing our audience reach and engaging with audiences in these two different platforms in the right way for your organization. If you have any questions, just do pop them in as I go through. Please feel free to pop them into the questions tab. I've got a couple here. Oh, a few comments. Yeah, I'll just crack on. Just feel free to pop them into the questions tab. And I'll try and come back to it as we go through. But I'll try and pause for questions as I go through the tabs, because I'll try and, as I say, I'll try and fly through the different tabs, the different topics today. Cool. So to get us started, just a little bit about me to begin with. So my name is Pumalo. I'm one of the relationship managers and course instructors here at Lightful. So I've worked in marketing and fundraising for a number of years, sort of working and building digital campaigns that have aimed to engage a variety of audiences. So hopefully I'll be able to share some of the insights that I've picked up with you as we go through today. To start off with, so what we hope to cover, and I've kind of gone through this already, but basically, firstly, I'll take you through some learning objectives so you're clear on what you'll be getting out of the session today. And I'll start with looking at Instagram best practices, some housekeeping stuff. We'll go over some hashtags and mentions, some advice on storytelling on Instagram, and then some final sort of reminder tips and tricks that we should all be applying when it comes to engaging our audiences on Instagram. And then I'll basically just do the same thing for Facebook pages and Facebook groups as well, before going over some final thoughts and some key takeaways for you guys today. So cool, to get started with our learning objectives. So firstly, we want you to be able to understand how to make the most of Instagram for your organization. This is the same for Facebook pages and the same for Facebook groups as well. So importantly, we want you to be able to understand how you can define your audiences across these two different platforms. So hopefully you'll be able to get some key takeaways and some key insights on how you'll be able to do that across these two popular social media platforms. Okay, so now I'm sure we're sort of clear on, because the learning objectives are what we're hoping to get at. I'll just kind of dive right into it, starting with Instagram. So hopefully you all know what Instagram is. It's a free app that allows you to share posts and videos with followers, as well as other Instagram users through the use of hashtags. You can share posts on your page, which are permanent, or you can actually add a story which your followers will be able to see for 24 hours. If you don't currently use Instagram, it's worth thinking about for your organization. I think it's got upwards of 1 billion active users, or nearly a billion active users every month, which is second only to Facebook, actually. So it's likely that your audience members are on and active on Instagram. So it's worth thinking about that as a means of engaging your audience. So some housekeeping stuff, if you haven't, and this will be relevant if you haven't set up your Instagram account before, but it also acts as a good reminder if you have set up an Instagram account. So just some checks and balances for you to go over as well. So the first thing is to make sure you sign up for Instagram with a business profile. So among the many other perks that you get for signing up with a business profile, your account will be added to the business category, which helps to distinguish it from normal user accounts. You should also list yourself as a nonprofit. That way, when somebody comes across your profile or follows you, they will know instantly that you're a charity, which also helps in creating the solid first impression that you want to put across to your audience. Make sure you add your email, your contact details, and your website in your profile bio. Another reason why you should start with a business profile is that you actually get access to helpful insights. You'll be able to see the reach of your posts, the impressions your posts are having, as well as the engagement that your posts are having. Everything will be right there in front of you at this stage, and you need to know that you're starting with a business profile to create a strong foothold in your market. So it just helps you to establish yourself as separate from a personal account. So always think about using the business profile feature. As well, just a couple of other tips and tricks. So, with Instagram, you have the option to add a bit of a blurb, which gives you an opportunity to tell your audience a little bit more about yourself. You can add a link to where your audience can find out a bit more about you. So whether you've shared a specific campaign in some of your posts, or you want to tell them a bit more about your organization, you can actually add a link back to your website. Also, you can save your top Instagram stories. This is a relatively new feature, which I'll dive into a little bit more detail shortly, but you can actually save your top stories as highlights, which kind of takes away from that. Remember, I mentioned that usually stories are only up for 24 hours. So being able to save them as highlights allows you to group them under specific campaigns, which is what we usually recommend, which means your audience can actually still interact and view any stories that you're putting up. Cool. And then moving on to, let's see if we've got one question. A few comments coming through. So moving on to sharing content on Instagram. So the first thing that we often get asked is how often you should actually share content and posts on Instagram. When it comes to frequency, we usually recommend the post quality content at least twice a day. If not twice, one post is a must, definitely. This will help you regularly pop into feeds of people who follow you, and they'll be able to see all the action happening in your organization. Try to explain your purpose, how you help people, what your cause is. Create content that helps people understand who you are and if you are worthy of support or not. Your organization's philosophy should be highlighted through pictures that you post at least once or twice a day. Another thing to think about when you're sharing content is to post both video and photo content. So Instagram is an image heavy app. You can, just looking at those two images that I've shared, it's clear that the real focus is on the images that you share, but you can also post videos as well. So, and according to Social Times, Instagram's photos actually get 36% more likes than its videos. But as I said, videos gain more comments than photos. So that's worth thinking about as well. So don't focus too much on one. It's good to mix it up with both videos and photo content. Actually, back in April 2016, Instagram changed their rules so that videos can range up to now go up to 60 seconds. But be aware of how your audience actually engages with longer content. Data has previously shown that engagement tends to drop off as the length of videos increase, so that's worth thinking about as well. Instagram actually also now has a TV section where you can post even longer videos, which is sometimes useful for things like interviews or when you're talking about appeals that tend to give your audience a bit more detail than what you can post on your actual feed. Next thing to think about is creating stories that you can, again, as I mentioned, save to your highlights. And just to go over stories again, so Instagram stories basically allow you to upload fun snapshots of your organization without the fear of overposting. Because as I said, they only last for 24 hours. It also gives a good idea it's a good idea to add stories to your highlights, as I mentioned earlier, which is a fairly recent feature Instagram has highlighted under certain category. Beg your pardon. So it's a fairly recent feature that Instagram has added, and again, it allows you to highlight your stories under certain categories that you can then save permanently on your profile page. We recommend, again, grouping stories by campaign names or themes so your audience can quickly navigate to the most relevant highlight that they want to see. Use hashtags. That's really important. Instagram and Instagrammers love hashtags. They're the best way to follow and get followed. When you use hashtags relevant to your account and the cause you follow in your posts, you're going to get followers that belong to your tribe, if you will. It's also a good idea to use mentions. Mentions are a great way of interacting with your audience and other Instagram users. You can tag volunteers, local businesses, partners, staff members, donors, etc. Which means they can then also actually share your posts and their profiles, which adds to the potential reach of your post. And then in terms of sharing content, as we say, Instagram's very, very image heavy, but it's still really important to be able to actually tell your audience stories. So I'll just touch on storytelling through Instagram in a little bit more detail now. Nowhere more, again, I can't stress this enough how image heavy Instagram is. So nowhere more has the phrase kind of a picture says 1,000 words be more relevant. So it's really important that you share your brand story through your Instagram posts. Instagram is all about subtle marketing. People scroll right past your posts if they scream promotion. So it's important to actually adhere to what's called the 80-20 rule. Has anybody heard of that, or has anybody used that before? It basically means that 80% of your posts should be compelling content, while the remaining 20 can be promotional. What do I mean when I say exciting or compelling content? Instead of posting that you are, collecting funds or trying to raise awareness for a certain appeal, it's actually a lot better if you actually create content that subtly highlights that same thing. So think about how you can tell a story of how your organization has potentially helped someone over a series of posts, as opposed to just using each post to highlight that you're actually collecting for something or giving out an ask. So you actually tell the story of, kind of look at it backwards, where you're telling the story of how that donation or volunteers have helped you in the past, or how they've helped your beneficiaries over a series of posts, as I said, or instead of actually just using each post to ask for a donation, because it becomes very obvious, and um, it becomes very tiresome for audiences if they're continuously kind of seeing asks throughout your feed. So it's good to use that 80-20 rule to kind of split storytelling and then actually giving people a way in which they can help your organization or get involved with your organization. And just to recap on Instagram, so again, strong imagery is really important. So if you've try and create a bank of imagery, and that can be anything that kind of puts across your brand message and makes it really clear what your organization does. That could be imagery from your staff, imagery from your beneficiaries, imagery from volunteers, as long as it's clear what your brand is trying to do or achieve, and that imagery is strong, it can be used on Instagram. Highlight key hashtags and mentions. So try and use hashtags related to specific events. So just to go back to the previous slide, I don't know if you can see some of the hashtags that they've used. If I go back one more. So in the breast cancer for now post, you can see, they've got Great North Run hashtag there. They've also got Team Now. So those hashtags might not necessarily be specific to that organization, but they're key and they're going to get a lot of traffic. So be really clever with the hashtags that you want to use for either specific campaigns or specific posts. So look at what images are used. Again, you've got a range of imagery that you can use, but be really clear on what your audience wants to see and how they're going to potentially engage with what you put up. And then use the analytics feature. So again, going back to one of the main reasons for using a business profile is the fact that you actually get small insights into how your audience is interacting with your Instagram feed. So use those analytics to investigate which hashtags are performing well, what your audience is clicking on, and then replicate that in terms of putting it out again and again. So check in daily. Instagram's very interactive. You've got a comment section. You've got, people can like and share your posts. So check in with people, reply to comments, make sure that you're actually, it's a two-way conversation between you and your audience. Curate your feed so it's inspirational and informative. So again, make sure that your organization's goal is clear and that you're actually both inspiring your audience and providing the relevant information on how they can support your organization. And then lastly, it's a bit of a cheat, but it's actually quite useful. So follow and interact with similar organizations. If people are doing stuff well, don't be afraid to kind of take it and adjust it for your Instagram, and just be aware that it might not necessarily work for your audience. So again, going back to using those insights and what your audience actually wants to see. But sometimes, there are things that organizations are doing really, really well, and that you can just kind of adjust and copy to your Instagram feed to increase your engagement with your specific audience. Cool. So that's a brief sort of recap or insight into Instagram and some best practices. It'd be interesting to hear in the comment section, or if you've got any questions so far, or comments on what you guys are doing on Instagram, or if you haven't used Instagram before, what are your top questions, or what are your fears about using Instagram? So yeah, please do just comment in the comment section, and I'll try and go through some of the questions at the end. So moving on next to Facebook pages. So some best practices for Facebook. So I'm sure you're all aware Facebook is the biggest social network in the world. It's got over 36 million people in the UK are on Facebook. So that's, somewhat like 67% of the population. So there's a huge potential audience there on Facebook. A UK user actually spends on average an hour and 50 minutes a day on Facebook. All of the internet users in the UK, I think roughly 78% of them use Facebook. So more compelling is that a whopping 40 million people, or 71% of the UK adults, can be reached with adverts on Facebook. So just think about that audience size. So it's more than likely that your audience members are active and using Facebook. So hopefully some of these best practice tips I'll go through now will help you better reach those audience members. So when it comes to sharing content on your Facebook page, put together this little graphic which kind of gives you an idea of what kind of content is shared on Facebook pages and what's quite useful. So, think about all of this is relevant, but try and think about what your audience interacts with more. So think about important messaging, casual posts, user-generated content, sharing information about campaigns, events, team activities, getting quotes from some of your either beneficiaries or people that have supported your organization in the past or volunteered for your organization. And then just a range of engaging posts, so conversations, you going back and replying to supporters and giving feedback. It's your Facebook page should actually display a range of these different content themes. So it's really, really important that you're touching all of these themes. Some of it may be weighted more over periods of time, but it's really important that you have a good mix of these content themes to really, really increase your audience engagement. And then just going into sort of content a little bit more. So the best kind of content for Facebook. So it's really important to share visual content on Facebook. So visual content can help you tell your story in a more appealing way. And that's things like images, videos, which can be more engaging than just plain text. Facebook is favoring videos to show up more often than on a news feed than it does plain text comments. Also, think about focusing on engagement. So Facebook has adapted its algorithm to show engaging posts show up, so that engaging posts show up more often on news feeds than posts with less engagement. So meaningful engagement means that you create content that people will see effortlessly, and it's easy for them to share and like as well. Try and avoid posts that ask people to like, comment, and share, because that comes across a little bit needy, and Facebook's actually trying to penalize posts like this. They actually, the algorithm actually works to try and reduce the reach of posts that come across a little bit needy and are asking people to like, comment, and share. So just take that into account. So when you're trying to increase engagement, it has to come across in quite a natural way. Create live videos. So live videos receive 3 times more engagement than other videos. They help connect with your audience in a more genuine way. It actually gives them an opportunity to interact with you, whoever's live on your Facebook page at the time, which is something that audiences love. make your content more interactive, as I said, and again, it gives them a glimpse of the inside of your organization, whether it's you planning for an event, you at an event, or any other activity that your organization is undergoing. So live videos are really cool interactive way that Facebook allows you to engage with audiences. And then some kind of technical bits as well. So, you know, when it comes to lengths of posts that contain sort of 40 characters or less are actually more likely to get 86% more engagement. Facebook posts with 80 characters or less receive 88% more engagement. So don't try not to push the limits of your posts. But if you do, there's a limit of, I think it's upwards of 60,000 characters in a Facebook post. So sometimes you do see posts with loads and loads of text. These are sometimes good when you're actually telling an in-depth story that you want to get across to your users. But think about how you can do that as well with imagery or with links. Don't clutter your Facebook page with text heavy posts. Try and keep them between that 40 character and 80 character mark. Also, try not to include text in your images. It can affect the quality of the post. So you can test how it will affect reach in Facebook using the Facebook ad testing tool as well, which gives you some insight on the potential reach your Facebook post is going to get before you've actually posted it. And again, just to recap on some tips and tricks for Facebook. So think about when the best time to post is. So you can actually use the Facebook Insights, the Facebook Insights tool to get some of these key analytics and analytical insights, which will help when it comes to thinking about the frequency of your posting and who you're targeting, and as well as best time to post. So it's important to schedule your content at the most engaging times. Just look at when your audience has engaged in the past, and then try and just post then, and then see if you're getting the same levels of engagement. You can learn more about the best time to post via actually Lightful Analytics. Lightful will let you know the best time to post based on our experience, based on how, as I said, audiences have engaged with your post previously. And then you can just check when the best time to post is, and then you can actually just schedule your next post. It's actually quite a simple process. When it comes to frequency of posting, think about quality over quantity. Only post content that is more chances to be engaging. On average, try and post up to 3 to 4 posts a week, so that you're keeping in touch with your audience members, but you're not overloading your feed with content, so that it becomes a bit tiresome for them. And then finally, think about targeting. So with newsfeed targeting, you can actually choose who should see a particular post in their newsfeed. Not everyone has to see every post, so don't treat your Facebook page like a bulletin board. And that's really important. So think about who you want to reach, and then use the newsfeed targeting feature on Facebook to actually post specific content to specific people's news feeds. Cool. So that's kind of whirlwind tour of Facebook pages, and then finally I'll go through Facebook groups. But just before I do that, I'll just stop and briefly check how we're doing okay for time. Has anybody got any? Sorry, I'm missing your questions. I'll come to your questions at the end. I know people have got got a few questions, so I'll try and go through these at the end when I've gone through some of these last couple of slides. That's okay. Cool. So moving on to Facebook groups. So groups as opposed to pages. The groups allow people to come together around a common cause, an issue or activity. If they have an activity to organize, it allows them to express objectives, discuss issues, post photos, and then share related content as well. Facebook is evolving to focus more on building communities and groups, are a natural tool to help forge those new kinds of connections. I think roughly over 1 billion people already belong to Facebook groups. About 10% of those belong to groups that Facebook has identified as very meaningful. So communities that quickly become the most important part of someone's experience on Facebook. And then just to share that graphic again, so as opposed to Facebook pages, these are some of the content themes you should be thinking about when posting on your Facebook group. So important messaging, so it's a bit more tailored than it was. As you can see, I've blurred out some of the content themes that you would have seen on Facebook pages posts. Because it's a bit more tailored, your audience is slightly smaller, so you can actually be a bit more specific with the content that you want to post. So think about posting important messaging, user-generated content, information about campaigns or events that are coming up as well. And then breaking those sort of content themes down. So again, this is very, very similar to Facebook pages, but think about sharing video content, going over some of the points that I made earlier. So visual content obviously helps you tell a more appealing story. So think about images and videos, and then think about some of those limitations when it comes to text and some of the drop-off rates in terms of engagement between length of text versus imagery. Something that you want to do that's specific to Facebook group, the content that you'll share on Facebook groups as opposed to pages, is make sure that you're always welcoming new members. So build your community around your members and empower them by introducing them to the group. Make them feel really, really welcome as soon as they join. Use a variety of different methods to invite them. Perhaps you want to do it individually or in groups. Again, think about who your audience is and think about what works best for them. Another engaging thing to do on Facebook groups is polls and questions. So you can connect with your audience in a more genuine way that adds a variety to your posting. So it's not just you posting content at them. So make sure that it's that idea of having a two-way conversation with your audience. So make your content more interactive. It allows you actually also to give a glimpse of an event or an activity that's coming up. So ask them about, a campaign that you've run, ask them about what they want to hear or see from your organization. It's just a really good way of getting them involved and making them feel part of your organization. Again, go live. So live videos, again, get three times more engagement than other videos. So this is a great way of giving that sort of behind the scenes glimpse to your organization. It just helps make your content that bit more interactive. And then just some reminders again for Facebook groups, some tips and tricks. So make sure to link your page to your group, your Facebook page to your group to give it a bit more authenticity. So it's quite easy for Facebook users to just create groups. So make sure it's linked to your page so that anybody joining your group knows that it's actually you. Again, it just adds that level of authenticity to it. Once your group has reached 250 members, you can actually use group insights. So that's available to anybody that's an admin of your group. You can actually now view metrics about their groups. You can now see how your group is growing, how engaged it is, and find out when your audience is actually engaging with the content that you share. Once you figure that out, you can then start thinking about when the best time to post is, and then the frequency of how you're posting. So that, again, is really, really important. So make sure you're putting content into your Facebook group when your audience is actually likely to interact with it. And the same thing goes for frequency. You don't want to be posting too frequently. So think about posting, again, sort of 3 to 4 times a week. Obviously, if people are responding, continuously check up and check in with your groups and make sure that you're interacting with your audience members in your group as well. Cool. Just some final thoughts then, before I come to some of your questions. So some key takeaways really, and this goes for both Facebook and Instagram. It's really, really important to keep messaging consistent, not just across those two social media platforms, but across all your different mediums or the different ways in which you engage with your audience. So try and establish a tone of voice that your audience will be familiar with, and then make sure you're keeping it consistent across those social media platforms. It may vary slightly depending on which social media platform you use. So for example, Twitter is a little bit more conversational. It may be a bit more conversational on your Facebook group as opposed to your Facebook page. But try and make sure that your tone of voice is the same so that your audience starts to establish some familiarity with, struggle to get that word out there, with how you sound and who your brand identity is. The second thing that's really important is to research your audience. So make sure your audience, you're talking to your audience in the right place. There's no point having an Instagram account if your audience members aren't on Instagram. Or if they're not using Facebook groups, there's no point trying to force them onto Facebook groups. So make sure that you research your audience, and that you're talking to them in the right way and in the right place. Another thing that organizations often forget to do is to repurpose content. So again, this goes in hand with the keeping messaging consistent. So it's very easy to get in a flurry and worry about constantly creating new content. Sometimes, if things are working on Instagram, you may just need to adjust it very slightly and it might work on Facebook. So think about how you can repurpose content across different social media platforms as well as your website. Think about that. Think about what your audience is engaging with and what might work on different platforms. Use the insight and analytics available to you. So Lightful has some in-depth analytics when it comes to Facebook and Twitter, but and Instagram as well. But these platforms also offer native analytics, and what I mean by native is that you can often get quite in-depth analytics by looking at the analytics offered on each platform as well. So that's worth having a look at. That will give you an idea of what your audience is engaging with. So what's working for you and what's not working for you. Don't forget to interact with your audience. And I can't stress that enough. One of the benefits of using social media is the fact that it offers, that two-way conversation. So make sure that it's not just you constantly pushing content out. Take the time to respond to comments, to promote your audience's posts as well and share their posts. Make it a two-way thing. Make it a two-way relationship. Because your audience, again, will really, really appreciate that. And then lastly, just tell compelling stories. And this is something that, you know, charities and nonprofits often have over sort of commercial companies. Is that most charities have very compelling stories. So don't forget to share those with your audience. Don't get bogged down in constantly asking for help and asking for donations. Make sure that you're actually showing one, you know, what your organization is doing and where it came from and why it needs to exist, before actually going into the ask. And then make sure that you're showing the impact of your donors or your supporters help. So make sure that you're telling those stories, whether it's user stories, whether it's stories about staff, beneficiaries. Just make sure that you're taking the time to actually share that with your audience. Cool, and that's it in terms of what I had to share with you. Again, a lot of you will be very aware with a lot of what I've gone over. I was hoping that this could just act as a bit of a reminder. I know everybody's, you know, looking at new ways to engage audiences currently in the current climate. So it's always good to just go over some stuff and make sure that you're actually, you know, using some of the best practice tips to engage your audiences. Cool. So I'll just stop sharing my screen, and I'll go through some of the questions that we've got now. Was that clear for everybody? Everybody understand? Sorry if I went through everything so quickly. I realized that we were pressed for time after the late start, so I've ended up flying through everything. There you go. So first thing we've got a question from Claire. Can you change your profile to a business one if you've already set one up? Yeah. So you can do that, Claire. Let me just show you how. So what I can do is I can pick up with you after and take you through the steps of doing that, but it's relatively easy to do. I can show you that. We've actually got a separate slide deck for Instagram and setting up Instagram. So getting started with Instagram, which I can share with you, Claire. Any suggestions on the number of hashtags? Yeah, so advice on hashtags, and this varies from post to post. But when it comes to hashtags, kind of think anywhere between sort of 5 and 11 hashtags. Again, the important thing with hashtags is to make them relevant. So don't get, because again, it's quite see-through. Audience members will know if you're just trying to boost posts through hashtags, if you've got a bunch of relevant stuff in there. So just make sure that they're relevant to your cause, the images that you're sharing on Instagram, and what you're actually talking about in that post. But anywhere from sort of 5 to 11 is fine. And that was to your question, Jenna. Did I add some other questions? Frequency. Andy asked a question about frequency of posting stories in the feed. How important is consistency of posting images, including the type of content, as well as how often? So in terms of frequency of posting Instagram stories, I'd say try and post something daily. If you've got again, this varies in terms of how relevant it is. So don't find yourself feeling that you have to post a story if you don't have anything to share. Usually try and theme them around a specific campaign, or if you've got an ask or a particular story to tell. Obviously with the lack of in-person events, it's a little bit harder now, but quite a good thing to do in terms of sharing stories is using it as a way to tell people what's coming up. So if you've got something coming up, a particular campaign that you're trying to raise awareness for, you can use your stories for that as well. So try and post daily. And then in terms of content, as actual posting of images, again, try and post daily on your Instagram feed. But again, don't force it. Try and keep it consistent with what you've been posting before, and make sure that it's relevant. Hope that's answered your question, Andy. And I'll share these slides with everybody after, as well as the recording as well, so everybody can see the questions. Kelly J had a question. Is it true that if you post more than once on Facebook newsfeed, your reach on the post will be lower due to the algorithm? I'm not too sure that it would be lower on the second. I presume you mean on the second post. Kelly, sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question. Is it true that if you post more than once on Facebook newsfeed, your reach on the post will be lower due to the algorithm? Oh yes, I understand your question. Sorry, Kelly. So yes and no. So Facebook is quite critical of over posting or oversharing. So it's important that you're sharing your content is relatively new. And this is actually the same for Twitter as well. So Twitter more so doesn't let you post the same thing over again. So as long as you're kind of sharing relatively new information, even if it's on the same campaign, so try not to try and hammer home the same post, if that makes sense. Think about a new way, whether it's, one post is quite image heavy, and then the next post is a little bit more text heavy, giving them a bit more information. It's basically Facebook's way of stopping clutter on news feeds. So it does tend to penalize people that post too frequently on news feeds. Damien, your question on Instagram. So Damien's question is, my concern is that as a small charity, you often don't have the ability to take lots of images and create that much content. As a small charity, how often would you suggest we post? Should we create stock images, post with our logo, or real images, both? And how best can we grow our following? Yeah, that's definitely something that comes up a lot in terms of small organizations. So the first thing I would suggest, which you've kind of given the answer to yourself, is try and create a bank of imagery. So collate all your imagery in one place, and then try and plan that out. So whether it's over a week, and then break that down into how many posts you'll be doing a day. So if it means you're doing one post a day, try and think about how you can spread what content you already have over a day. So look at an example could be that, which again you've provided, is if you have a stock image, but you've still got some text or some hashtags that you want to talk about, actually create some infographics. There are loads of useful tools out there that one off the top of my head that's free for nonprofits is a tool called Canva. which allows you to create really handy infographics as well as other kind of imagery. It's really good in terms of kind of helping you fill gaps in content. Also think about sharing images from your audience members. So ask them to get involved, and then you can and then that does the work for you in terms of you not having to create content. You can actually just use some images, whether it's to do with a specific campaign or an event that you've got coming up. It helps fill that gap as well. Last couple of questions. I've just realized that we've gone over time. So what I'll do is I'll try and come back to some of these questions personally, and I'll make sure I share the video of this recording. I hope you've all found it very useful. And again, thank you very much for taking the time to join me today. I know everybody's very busy. So I appreciate you coming and spending an hour with me. I hope you've been able to pick up something. But yeah, stay safe, and I look forward to chatting with you all again soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.